having a good time.
So I did that all by myself, Joe. Figured it out.
We want an engineering lunch and learn. Just teach us about the product.
Ooh, I would do that.
That would be cool.
We should do a front end one and a back end one.
We demand it. So start
I would,
planning.
I would
Love
very-
that. I actually brought
very
that
much
up to
happy
Karen.
to
do that.
Yeah, I would be interested to learn more of like what the difference is.
Yeah, I actually brought that up to Karen too, and she was like, "Wait, that's a great idea." Because I was like, I want to know more about what I'm doing.
So the difference is that like everything that's like fun and exciting and really cool is front end, and then there's the back end.
All right, well, Evie, you get to work on that after this.
Okay.
I'll do the next one. Okay, we
He's not wrong.
started. I feel like we're good to go. It's recording. Evie, you can click in. We'll just review. First of all, thank you for everyone for joining. We're really excited to do this. Big shout out to Evie. I'm just here to kind of set the stage with the Trevor Project.
What's happening?
That Evie is the main event. I don't know. Where are you going?
I don't know. It was doing that on its own. Hopefully it won't do that again.
The agenda, I'm going to set the stage with the Trevor Project overview, just a little bit of history there, a little bit of the importance of them, and then Evie's really going to get into the meat of why the Trevor Project is vital for today's current climate. So to start, go ahead, we can go to the next one. Just a little timeline to give a little bit of history of the Trevor Project. In 1994, there were 3 people who collaborated on a short film called Trevor. This was inspired by one of the original founders did a one-man show called Word of Mouth. And then they created this 18-minute film called Trevor, which is actually about a young boy who is going through really discovering himself and his sexuality and does attempt suicide within this fictional story. It does have a happy ending, and I can send out a little bit more info if anyone's interested in seeing that. And then in 1998, the 3 people who worked on this together founded the Trevor Project and named it after this story. It got kicked off really with the helpline, which was the first helpline in the US to offer suicide prevention and crisis counseling to LGBTQ, which is funny, it says GLBTQ, which I think I pulled directly from the article. So is funny. I don't know if that's a mistake or they just used to say that maybe in 2007.
Megan, I have a fun fact real quick if you want to know why L comes before G.
Oh, why?
Because during the AIDS crisis, it was largely gay men who were affected, and lesbians were primarily acting as like caretakers for a lot of the very sick individuals and in the gay community. And so it was decided that lesbians should be listed first in the
Oh, that is super interesting. I was wondering why it was written that way. Oh, good to know. Love that. So again, the Trevor Hotline, this was the first one that was available 24/7 in the US. In 2004, there was a little bit of an expansion here. So the helpline number and website was featured in a 7-second announcement on cable television after a certain episode of a TV show, which really got broadcasted to anyone who was watching in the US, which was huge for them. And then they expanded their mission into education, and they produced the Trevor Survival Kit. And the Survival Kit was given out by thousands for free to educators. So that was really their expansion into education as they started.
But yeah, Jim, I mean, if Jim was still there.
I muted Vince, sorry, Vince. And then in 2007, I just wanted to highlight, this really is when they started to get a huge kind of following and just recognition. A lot of celebrities, whenever that happens, starts to take part in their mission. So Jodie Foster kicked off a fundraising campaign by making the largest donation in history at the time. And then you can go to the next slide, Evie. And then there's today. So here we are, 2023. Their mission is to end suicide among LGBTQ young people still to this day. They have their crisis services, they have the public education, and then they've also continued with research, advocacy, and the Trevor space. One more, we can keep going. So why is the Trevor Project so important? So some of their findings through research really highlight why this is so important. So suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people aged 10 to 24, and LGBTQ youth are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their peers. More than 1.8 million LGBTQ youth seriously consider suicide each year, and at least one attempts suicide every 45 seconds. They've also found that 45% of LGBTQ youth seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year, including more than half of transgender and non-binary youth. Next slide. And as a result of anti-LGBTQ policies and debates, which we will get into a little bit more in a few minutes with Evie, they found that 1 in 3 transgender or non-binary youth reported not feeling safe going to the doctor or hospital. 1 in 3 LGBTQ young people have experienced cyberbullying, and 1 in 3 reported bullying at school in the past year. One more statistic that we wanted to call out to highlight is that having at least one accepting adult can reduce the risk of suicide attempt among LGBTQ young people by 40%, which is huge and really something that is amazing to call out and that they found. And all of these statistics are through the Trevor Project research, which they do all on their own. So before we continue, I just wanted to take a minute. I kind of set the stage with some statistics. So it's a lot of information, can be overwhelming. If anyone had any comments or questions before we proceeded, just wanted to give everyone a minute. Otherwise, Evie is going to take it over from here.
Cool. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about something that's very close to me, which is transgender rights and politics, especially in the current political climate in this country and many of the other Western countries right now. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the transgender community specifically. Data indicates that 82% of transgender individuals have considered killing themselves, and 40% have attempted suicide, with suicidality rates highest amongst transgender youth. 1 in 3 transgender people in the United States have experienced homelessness. 63% of transgender people and 80% of non-binary people who are experiencing homelessness were unsheltered homeless people. These numbers are high for a lot of reasons, and all of them are related to discrimination. So one thing to call out here is that very few states in this country have protections against discrimination based on gender identity. So that is one of the many reasons why we see a lot of homelessness. There is also a lot of transgender youth being kicked out of their homes by unaccepting parents, etc. So moving on to the next slide. It is estimated that about 7% of the US adult population is either lesbian, gay, or bisexual. That is out adult citizens of the US. I'm gonna make this little query to the group here. What would you estimate, if you know this from my social media, don't cheat. What would you estimate is the percentage of the US adult population that is transgender? This includes trans men, trans women, and non-binary individuals. Does anyone want to make a guess? Nobody? I'm not moving on until someone makes a guess.
I know, I can't guess.
Yeah, Megan and Joe can't.
I can't guess either.
Jason knows because Jason follows me on social media. Anyone?
32%. This is just a wild guess, like 3%.
3%? Okay.
I was gonna say 3% too, but I feel like it might be higher. 7%.
Megan, what did you guess? Oh wait, you're muted.
Oh, I said 32%. I know if it was higher or lower.
Wait, no, sorry. That's not percentage. It's percentage of the U.S. population. So all people, not out of the 7%.
Oh.
Not out of the 7%. Okay, I'm gonna say 10%. I'm gonna say 8%. Actually.
No, sorry. So let me, to be clear. So 7% of the US adult population is LGBT. So that is 7 out of every 100. So I'm saying out of every 100 US adults, how many transgender people do you think there are?
Aya says 5% and Nathan said 7.
I'm gonna stick with 8%.
Okay, so the actual answer is 0.5%. So we are talking about a very, very small percentage of the US population. So less than half, so approximately half a percentage point. So that means 1 in every 200 people, which makes the transgender community one of the smallest in the country. And it is estimated that throughout history, most societies have an approximate rate of 1% birth rate of transgender people, which means about half the people right now are probably still closeted due to any sort of external pressures. But yes, right now it is about 1 in every 200 people. So the current climate, these are the total anti-LGBTQ bills over the last 5 years, starting in 2018. A little bit of history here. We're going to go back to, does anyone know what big legal event happened for the gay community in 2003? So 2003 is actually when gay sex became legal in this country. It was Lawrence versus Texas, and it removed the anti-sodomy laws. So it was criminalized to have gay sex in 2003. Can anyone tell me what happened in 2015?
Is that when marriage was allowed?
Yes, that's Oberfell v. Hodges, which was when gay marriage was made legal. We saw a rapid ramp up in once it became clear that fighting against LGB was a losing battle for culture wars for certain politicians. 2016 saw the beginning of anti-trans bathroom bills, which the state I'm in right now, North Carolina, was the first to pass one, which was eventually overturned, but there were years where transgender people could not use the bathroom associated with their gender in the state. So let's look at just the last 5 years. So in 2018, so of all of these bills, each year, approximately 90, this is just like a loose estimation, but pretty much like about 90% of the bills that we're talking about here weren't just anti-LGBTQ, they were specifically anti-trans. So in 2018, we had 19 bills. 2019, there were 25. In 2020, there were 60. In 2021, there were 131. And in 2022, for the whole year, there were 155 anti-trans bills. Anti-LGBT, but again, mostly anti-trans. So it is 2023. We are March 9th. So we're about 9 weeks into the year. I would want to, again, if nobody who follows me on social media, so that means Jason and not Megan and Joe, because they've already seen this presentation. Can someone give me a guess as to in the last 9 weeks, how many anti-trans bills have there been proposed across all 50 states? So it's just the last 9 weeks.
I remember my initial guess, if you want.
Okay, what was your initial guess, Joe?
My initial guess to you, I think, was 90.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Man, I thought my guess of 22 is going to be wild, but
I think it's like at least over 100. Like,
And these are bills across all states.
Yes, this is all 50 states in just the last 9 weeks. So these were the bills for the entire year for these years. And I'm just talking about the last 9 weeks. So 2023.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Ksenia on this one. I think probably over 100.
Well, over 100 is correct because the answer is 425. So this year, the GOP has decided to create a wedge issue out of LGBTQ plus rights, specifically targeting the transgender community. In just the last 2 months of 2023, there are now over 425 active bills. As a breakdown, 7 have already been signed into law, 2 are merely pending governor's signature, 44 have passed one chamber, 41 have passed committee, and 52 have failed. Okay, so what do those laws look like?
Evie, can I point out, because I liked that. So Evie and I did a dry run of this on Monday, and it's Thursday, and Evie had to go in and update that last slide she showed because 3 more bills had gotten passed that quickly between Monday and Thursday that her slide, all of these numbers changed within the matter of 4 days, which I thought was just a jaw-dropping realization of how quickly these things are happening and being passed. So I just wanted to call that out.
So yeah, this has been happening at a breakneck pace. Again, this is all of this that we're talking about here is the last 9 weeks. So this has escalated very, 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 very quickly since gay marriage was passed and the trans community was targeted. It has been ramping up, but this year it's the sole focus, it seems, or not the sole focus, but one of the primary focuses. not to get too specifically political, but Trump came out with his 2024 platform video. And in it, apart from saying that transgender people mutate their bodies, he also said that one of his primary goals for his election in 2024 would be to outlaw gender affirming care in all 50 states for all ages. So as you can imagine, that was a little bit alarming. So in the last 2 months of 2023, there were over 425. So yes, on Monday, this was 400. I believe it was 4 had been signed. How many? 3 had been signed into law at the time.
Yeah.
More were pending. And yeah, a lot of these numbers have changed just in the last 3 days. 7 states have passed laws removing care that every medical organization has stated is medically necessary and associated with a 73% reduction in suicide. So again, we talked earlier about the numbers. Approximately 81% of transgender people have considered suicide and 40% have attempted. So if you're talking about medical care that will reduce that number by 73%, and it's agreed to by every major medical association, all mental health and physical health people agree, the American Medical Association, et cetera, et cetera. This is not a contentious point of medical care. This is agreed on by every reputable medical professional. So that's 7 states have passed laws removing care. Montana has passed a religious refusal of medical care that lets providers refuse medical care to transgender people. Now, this isn't just gender affirming care. This is, let's say I were in Montana and I had a stroke or a heart attack and went to the emergency room. As a trans woman, someone could say, oh, that's against my religion to treat this person, and they could just let me die. South Dakota passed a bill that tells doctors to cruelly medically detransition their patients. It instructs them to systematically reduce their patient hormone levels. So it actually gives instructions on how to slowly, basically medically detransition people to a gender not of their choosing. A committee in Missouri just passed a gender affirming care ban for trans youth. And in that ban, they amended out an exception that was present if the youth was in imminent danger of death. Tennessee has been one of the worst, particularly their governor seems to be very focused on this issue, but there have been a lot of terrible bills. And there's an anti-drag bill that targets not just drag, and just gender expression in general, but transgender people for simply going about their lives. It effectively criminalized the existence of transgender people in the state, meaning that I could go there and get arrested for just being. Montana just passed a bill through the House, which is the right to bully trans people. It states that using a trans kid's legal name and biological pronouns is not bullying. Missouri has nearly passed a bill that would forcibly medically detransition any trans person who is incarcerated. Combined with the anti-drag laws that are also being proposed in Missouri, which could target trans people and jail them just for existing in public, that obviously creates huge concerns. So, for instance, someone could be in public, get arrested for being trans, and then forcibly medically detransitioned. And Arkansas is now very seriously considering a bill that would make it a sex crime for a transgender person to walk into a bathroom if a child is present, meaning that they would be added to the sex offender registry and face jail time. Texas is home to the weaponization of the Department of Family and Protective Services. This is similar to some of the ways that they've been handling these things, is where they say that this is child abuse, basically like getting your child gender affirming care or supporting them in who they are. And they are, it is the home to 42 of the anti-trans bills proposed this cycle. Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi, South Dakota, Tennessee, and Utah have all passed gender affirming care bans for trans youth. Oklahoma is considering it up to age 26. And there's another state that is all ages. Florida has banned Medicaid coverage for trans adults, and some of the worst anti-trans bills proposed right now, including what many people are calling the kidnapping of trans kids, which means, again, Family Protective Services can come and take the kids away, even if parents are allowing their children to express themselves in a gender non-conforming way. They consider that child abuse and can come and take your kids away. The state of Montana tabled a bill from State Representative and trans woman Zoe Zephyr, HB 552, that would ban the gay trans panic defense. So if no one's familiar with this, the gay panic defense and trans panic defense is essentially a defense used, and it was used multiple times last year, to reduce charges against someone who murders someone else just because they suddenly discovered that they were trans or gay in some cases. You primarily see this with, so a lot of, like many women, trans women are often killed by their romantic partners, and usually it is to prevent other people from finding out that they were involved with a transgender person. And so there was actually a lot of charges last year. Murder charges were reduced to manslaughter, and in a couple of cases, the murderers were let off scot-free and released just for killing a trans person. Second period legislative risk map. So we're looking at like what the current climate of the country looks like. So this map is now a little bit outdated, but we are seeing where the worst active anti-trans laws are currently present. You can see that, so there's dark red areas. So this comes from a Substack that I follow, which a lot of news around the transgender laws being passed, and this gets updated frequently. But you can see where risk is rising with these warning symbols. The plus symbols means it's actually like dampening down, and where the most protections are. So you can see kind of what you would expect as far as like liberal versus conservative leaning states. But you can see just how much this issue is becoming a thing across the country.
Evie,
Yeah.
I want to take a quick pause. We're a little bit halfway through. Well, we're more than halfway through at this point, but we know this is an informative lunch and learn, but there's a lot of information that is coming at you. So just want to take a quick pause, let everyone take it in. If anyone wants to have any comments or questions, we're always happy to take a moment to spend extra time on anything that is being presented. So if anyone has anything, they're welcome to share or ask questions. Otherwise, we'll keep going. I just want to make sure we don't go over time. So at the end, we are going to be sharing resources. So I just want to call that out to make sure that in case you do have to jump early, if we go over, we'll be sure to send out those resources after too.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that really takes me to this next slide is like, so awareness. How many of you were aware of this? I don't think that, apart from people that maybe follow me on social media, I know this hasn't been getting a lot of coverage. And I wouldn't be surprised if none of this had been within your spheres of, let's say, news reading. Any thoughts
I
there?
have no idea. I did not know how bad this was until Evie made a comment. I think it was like at one of our all hands. And then I reached out to her, and this is how I became aware, which is scary that this is how I became aware.
Yeah, I live in Tennessee, and before that, South Carolina. So I see this pop up a lot for reasons that are opposite of what I believe in. So I'm well aware of Tennessee and those states and kind of like the southern states, and have my own thoughts there, but I did not know the scale of this. So definitely new to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't have a lot of transgender contacts, and again, 0.5% of the population, and we're talked about a lot in the media right now. And why is that? Well, the answer is media complicity. So we're going to talk a little bit, just real quickly here, about liberal-leaning publications, or at least ostensibly liberal-leaning publications, and their cover of trans topics. So I'm going to try to gloss over this a little bit and just like take it quickly, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on our detractors. But the New York Times helped fuel the anti-trans panic in 2022. One recent report from Popular found that in the past 8 months, Times has now published more than 15,000 words of front page stories asking whether care and support for young trans people might be going too far or too fast. This doesn't include stories from the first 5 months of the last year, or the stories that didn't make page A1. Recently, as of February 15th, there was a New York Times, an open letter to the New York Times published by approximately 200, actually it became higher than 200 after it was published, people supporting it. But these are contributors and editors to the New York Times, past and present, signed this open letter calling out the paper's coverage of transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people, and specifically said the Times has in recent years treated gender diversity with an eerily familiar mix of pseudoscience, euphemistic charged language, while publishing reporting on trans children that omits relevant information about its sources. So a lot of times they will publish things from specifically anti-trans activists who they will sort of pose as just concerned citizens. GLAAD wrote a similar letter and released it on the same day, asking for three very specific things. Stop printing biased anti-trans stories with very specific instances of what they don't want published here. Hold a meeting with one meeting with transgender community members and leaders and listen, and hire at least 2 trans people on the opinion side and at least 2 trans people on the news side. So what we're hearing about, so this is like basically asking, talk to trans people, stop publishing things that aren't backed by science, and please just hire a few trans people. Because you're reporting so much on trans news, it seems like it would make sense to have a trans reporter. But unfortunately, New York Times responded to this by saying that their mission and GLAAD's differs and that they will not be doing any of these actions. They also took punitive damage against many of the editors who are currently at the New York Times who signed the aforementioned letter. So, yeah. Moving forward, similar issues are coming from The Atlantic, The Guardian, and many other ostensibly liberal-leaning publications, henrying, but no real coverage or platforming of trans voices. We can see this from, for instance, like I just talked about all these laws. Finally, with the gender-affirming care bans in Tennessee, there was a report on it on CNN, and there was a panel of 6 experts. Can anyone guess how many trans people were on that panel? Jason?
0.
0, yes, that's correct. In that, one of the conservative pundits, actually a legislator, said that behind closed doors, his Democratic compatriots all said that fighting for trans issues wasn't worth it because it's making them lose. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but that's the kind of reporting we get. Let's look at The Atlantic. So this is a cover from 2018. This is a, at the time, I believe, 22-year-old trans male who acted as a model, was told they were just going to maybe used in stories about transgender related topics for stories for The Atlantic. Ended up being a cover story. So as I said, this is a trans man, 22. So on this cover, you can see that he was transgender and misgendered using she, her pronouns, and also said that he was 13. So misrepresenting him. It was also outed him to his parents. He was not out to his family at the time. And separately, can we see, so this is 2018, and this is what they thought was like the most pressing issue at the time. Okay, up here in little text, what was the headline? We're not prepared for the next pandemic. So which one of these do you think we should have been more concerned with? Not sure. Okay, next. Okay, so let's talk about the trickle-down effect of the reporting and the hatred. So all this legislation, what does this mean? So again, so what I'm going to report here is just trans women that have been killed in the US in violent crimes in 2023, so in the last 9 weeks. So here we have Cachet Henderson, 31-year-old Black transgender woman, is described as a bubbly spirit with a down-to-earth, tell it like it is personality. So she was found inside her burning home on the city's north side, shot. She had been shot and her home set on fire. She was one of 3 Black trans women killed in Milwaukee in the last 8 months. We have Maria here, a 22-year-old Latina transgender woman. She was found fatally shot in Houston. Her death is at least the 5th violent killing of a transgender or gender nonconforming person in 2023. Zaki, well loved by family, friends, and coworkers. Immigrated to the US from Rwanda, found killed in Louisville, Kentucky, in the parking lot of her workplace. Unique Banks, a 21-year-old Latina trans woman. She was killed in a mass shooting along with her mother. 2 other trans women were also attacked and leaving them in critical condition. Prosecutors declined to charge the 19-year-old arrested for the mass shooting at the South Shore apartment. He was a resident of the same apartment complex. So he is currently walking free. Jasmine Star Mack. So her sister, Pamela, said that she was a sweet person, loved to sing gospel songs, and an excellent actor. She was killed in Washington, D.C. on January 27th. Casey Johnson. So the 27-year-old white transgender woman was killed in Wilmington, North Carolina on January 14th, 2023, after being declared missing on January 13th. So I am actually coming to you right now from Wilmington, North Carolina, where I'm staying with my parents for a brief period. And I've been going to trans support groups here, and a lot of the community knew her. And so they're all still mourning her death here. And I hear from Denver. When I left to come to Wilmington, North Carolina last October for another visit, that day was the Club Q shooting in Colorado Springs, which is about an hour and a half to 2 hours from Denver. And there is no trans support group there. So many of the trans women in my trans women support group back in Denver are mourning loved ones that were killed in the Club Q shooting. Bringing up the Club Q shooting and New York Times media coverage, the two people that took down the gunman, one of them was a transgender woman. She was reported by the New York Times as a drag queen and misgendered. And they left that reporting up for days, despite GLAAD's repeated attempts to tell them that, no, this is a transgender woman, please gender her correctly. And they only relented and changed it and gave her the correct pronouns after GLAAD said they wouldn't let any of the other witnesses from the Club Q shooting talk to them until they updated the story. So that kind of gives you an idea of the bias at the New York Times right now. I'm going to pause there. So that's, again, just in the last 9 weeks, just transgender women in the US. Okay, moving on. Okay, what do all of these women have in common? Well, I'll tell you in a second, but first, I want to ask, does anyone know what a dead name is?
Yes.
Yes.
So what is that?
So the name that someone is given at birth or their name prior to transitioning.
Yes, that is correct. So it is a formerly used name, often from pre-transition, often the person's given name or legal name at birth. Does anyone know where the term comes from? Can anyone make a guess?
Yes.
Okay, Jason, please make a guess.
The media often will report a person's death by referring to them by that name incorrectly.
That is correct. So yeah, a lot of people think might mean, oh, it's a name that's dead to you. It's your former name. That's why it's your dead name. The actual answer is, so there are a lot of lore around the etymology of the term, but yeah, it specifically often is used, that term is used because going back to the 70s and 80s, when trans women and trans people of all, like trans men, non-binary, gender non-conforming, are killed, often we are reported in the news media through misgendering and use of what is essentially our dead name, which is why it is our dead name, because it's the name people are going to use when we're dead. So what do they all have in common? All of them were dead named by the media after their deaths. Let's talk about another shameful example from the UK from this year. This is 16-year-old Brianna Gay, transgender girl from the UK. Her classmates, both boys and girls, targeted her with transphobic bullying and abuse for years. There are videos of her being physically assaulted by classmates online, with teachers merely just walking by. Concerned parents had written letters to the school stating that she was in grave danger and they may soon have a death on their hands. She was stabbed to death in broad daylight on February 11th, 2023, at a local park by two 15-year-old classmates, a cis girl and a cis boy. The police declined to classify it as a hate crime. The Times, BBC News, and Sky News all misgendered her. The Times dead named her after reporters contacted her dental office under false pretenses to obtain it. They also went back and edited the story to remove all references to her being a girl in their story. They often, in the UK, transgender girls or women, they will describe as trans-identified males, and that is what they did. Additionally, because of many of the gender recognition bills being passed in the UK right now, it's also very, very bad in the UK. Her death certificate had to be issued stating that she was male, because under the age of 18, she couldn't legally update her gender. And so, unfortunately, her family had to receive that death certificate stating that she was male. Okay, moving forward. Okay, so escalation. So as I said, this is wrapping up very, very quickly. So over this last weekend, Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire called for genocide against trans people at CPAC. He stated that there can be no middle way in dealing with transgenderism, and that for the good of society, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. This statement was met with cheers from the crowd. So I have to say, it was a little surreal for me to watch that video and hear someone calling for my eradication and seeing a room full of people cheering for it. Earlier on February 28th, he said, no, he can't possibly be calling for a genocide of trans people because transgender people is not a real ontological category. It is not a legitimate category of being. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. He describes it as transgenderism, not trans people. And this is something that trans people have been saying, please don't use this term transgenderism or gender ideology. It is not an ideology. We are just people whose gender happens to not match our birth sex. And we don't call it transgenderism. We don't call it gender ideology. These are terms that are used to take away the human element of the subject and to dehumanize us. And there's specifically what he's doing here, and he knows what he's doing. I could show the video. I don't really want to right now. You can watch it. I did link it here in the slideshow. But yeah, something I want to call out here is that, so people say history often repeats itself. I like to say it doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And we're seeing a real ramp up on some of these like sort of more genocidal talking points. Something from the transgender history that I think a lot of people don't know, and I can talk more about this maybe in another presentation at some point, but there's a lot to do with trans history that I think a lot of people don't know. Stonewall riots were started, the first brick was thrown by Marsha P. Johnson, a trans woman. But one thing a lot of people don't know is, so a lot of people know that gay people were targeted also during the Holocaust and during World War II. What a lot of people don't know is that Germany before that was a fairly progressive country when it came to dealing with these issues. And there was a gender clinic, one of the first of its kind, doing gender affirming care in Germany for the Holocaust. And the first and biggest book burning of the Holocaust was going to that gender clinic, burning all the research, killing the doctors, and killing or jailing all of the transgender people that were being treated there. And at the end of the Holocaust, rather than releasing them, they were burned alive. So that is kind of, you know, it's often you see that like the smallest, most vulnerable groups are targeted first because they're the easiest target. And this has been sort of an echoing thing that happens throughout the years to transgender people, is that like as we are often the latest to get rights and the first to be targeted when rights are being taken away. And again, it is a slippery slope. So this is something that just happened last night, I believe, or no, yesterday, Tennessee. So this is just through the House, hasn't gone through the Senate, hasn't had governor's signature yet. Tennessee House just passed the bill completely gutting marriage equality. The bill could allow county clerks to deny marriage license to same-sex, interfaith, or interracial couples in Tennessee. So we can see how one version of hate leads to another. You can also see that slippery slope of, like I said, started with bathroom bills in 2016, then trans girls in sports, then gender affirming care for youth, and you can see how that's ramped up this year. A lot of these are canaries in the coal mines or dog whistles towards what they're actually asking for, which is eradication. And then from there, they will eradicate other groups. So this kind of hate speech does generally, I would say, need to be nipped in the bud. So I guess that's my sort of spiel for today on the state of things for transgender people. I do want to talk about, if any of you are concerned with this and you're saying, well, I didn't know about this, but now I do, what can I do? What now? So if you consider yourself an ally and want to help, that's good because we could use it. Trans people are tired. Having to educate cis people, advocate for ourselves, and debunk false narratives is exhausting. There is very little public support, and we rarely ask for help as a community, but right now we need it. Our voices are not being heard, and we don't have a platform. As I said, we don't get platformed on the news media. Think about how many books have you read written by a trans person? How many news stories have you read written by a trans person, etc. You, as a cis person, can and will be listened to. And when we come out, I know this was true for me when I came out, all I heard was, oh, you're so brave. How you're so brave. And I don't want to hear how brave I am anymore. What I want to hear is how brave you were for me. So 3 simple things. So this comes from, this is a list that I didn't make myself, but I totally echo the sentiment here. This was created by this list was written by a trans singer named Ms. Neon, but here are 3 simple things you can do as a cisgender person to be an ally. So push back on uneducated anti-trans sentiments from friends and family members. So I just kind of tried to give you some of the brief talking points of what's happening right now. And I think as far as activism is concerned, silence is complicity. If you do want to get involved, the most important thing you can do is whenever you hear those uneducated talking points being mirrored, speak up. That will go a long way. Number two, on social media, screenshot, repost, and share any information about the propaganda campaigns and threats to our existence. And or share any subsequent media that defends or affirms us in our case against said lobbying and political efforts. So again, a lot of you haven't heard about this. It's not being reported by the complicit news media right now. And so if we're going to get this out, it needs to be grassroots in a way, and we need people to share this information about what's happening. And number three, so this is probably not applicable to anyone here from what I know, but this is something that's difficult for a lot of people who are romantically involved with trans people. Often there's a lot of shame associated with being involved with a trans person. So if you ever find yourself involved with a trans person, hold their hand in public and be proud to show us off and love us openly. It's hard, but arguably the most effective when applicable. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about today. So I'm going to stop here. I know we're kind of out of time, but so like Megan said, I can share places to get news on what's happening with the transgender community. I can share with you books to read if you want to read about like the experiences of trans people. I have a number of really good books. I can point you in the direction of, and also again, if you live in one of the states where a lot of these bills are being passed or proposed, getting involved in the process of politics can be very helpful. So again, that's another thing you could do. And I can share sort of like the legislative trackers that I use to be aware of these things. I think Megan and I discussed creating an LGBTQ Slack channel. So if anyone's interested, please join that. And I can share information in there. And I'll also share a follow-up email, kind of giving some resources as well. But with the time we have left, if anyone has any questions, any thoughts, I would like to hear them. And I'm always kind of an open book. So if anyone has any concerns, any thoughts, I'm here to speak to you.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the Trevor Project. I love their mission. It's obviously like super amazing to have support for people who need support. But I don't think they actually have any aims or directives. They don't really put any effort towards like lobbying or, enacting, being activists, helping activists, and putting pressure on the political sides of things. Do you know of any organizations that take that approach, that really like an action pack group?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's a very, very good question. And I will share those in my follow-up email as well. So one, yes, Trevor Project they have a very noble goal, which is reducing LGBTQ youth suicide. And it's there for support. But it is true that they are a rather comparatively larger organization, and they do have a fair amount of funding. There are smaller organizations that could use the funding more, so a smaller donation will go a longer way for them and are more action-oriented in actually getting involved in the political process. And I will share a few of those in a follow-up email.
I learned a lot, Evie. Thank you for sharing this. Literally the whole time I was just like absorbing. But yeah, if you can share those resources, living in a state where a lot of these bills are getting passed, anything you have, for people that live in those states would be great too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I will send just like an initial, like I said, like within the hour after this, after we break here, I will send out some resources. But again, yeah, if you want to keep on top of it, I'm going to be continuing to share information in that Slack channel that I mentioned, which we will create right after this.
Awesome.
Okay. So yeah, thanks for listening. It's not a lot of, it's not something that I don't generally like to bring politics into work. And that's why I haven't been kind of bringing this stuff up over the last few years, but I did make a one-off comment and Megan kind of caught wind of it. And we kind of thought like this was a good way to sort of spread the word. So that's kind of the approach here.
Yeah, thank you, Evie. It was very informative, and I definitely learned a lot and want to keep learning. So I appreciate you being an open book and able to talk about this with us.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess just a couple other fun facts. So I am a bit of a trans woman stereotype in that I am a software engineer, which is the most common profession for trans women. And I play D&D, which is a very trans woman, actually trans person centric hobby. So I can definitely follow up with a D&D lunch and learn. And I'm very happy to do a front-end engineering lunch and learn. But if anyone is interested, please let me know. This is really like the tip of the iceberg on what's going on with trans politics and also trans history in general. And if you are interested, it is another topic that I'm deeply invested in. So it is something, if people are interested, I could do a follow-up to this presentation as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll send out an email after this with the recording, all the stuff Evie just mentioned, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Evie.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Evie.
Thank you, Evie. Thanks, Megan.
Bye-bye.